What if the foundation of all major world religions, from the Egyptian creation myths to Genesis, is actually a deliberately hidden memory of a single cosmic catastrophe, the spectacular explosion of a celestial object, whose metallic fragments rained down to Earth and were subsequently revered as the bones and seeds of God himself?
Get ready, because after this, you will probably be seeing strange rock worship pretty much everywhere.
We are starting this deep dive with 3 completely baffling objects. I mean, totally unrelated on the surface.
Right.
But we're about to link them with one unbelievable theory.
A theory that might just be the single greatest hidden secret of human civilization.
Are you ready for the cosmic mic drop?
I am so ready.
Okay, so think about these 3 items. They're separated by thousands of years, thousands of miles. First up, a legendary, pristine dagger.
Pulled from King Tutankhamun's tomb.
Exactly. And it's made of a metal the Egyptians called bija NPT.
Iron from heaven.
Then second, you have the black stone, Al-Hajar al-Aswad, which is the spiritual cornerstone of the Kaaba in Mecca.
Revered by billions of people.
And it's said to have fallen directly from the Garden of Eden. And then, and this is the one that really gets me, number 3.
You have the kicker.
A bronze statue of the Buddha. It was found by a Nazi expedition in Tibet, of all places, and science later determined it was carved from a meteorite.
A Nazi-found space rock Buddha.
Yeah, okay. You have my full attention. So that's the mission today. We are peeling back the absolute foundations of religion, of history, of mythology itself, to ask one, frankly, mind-blowing question.
Which is?
Are our most sacred traditions, and I mean everything from the deep roots of paganism right up to the Abrahamic faiths, are they secretly the remnants of the cult of an exploded planet?
And this is where we go deep. We've synthesized this incredible collection of sources, ancient Egyptian texts, Sumerian epics, Gnosticism, archaeological analysis.
All of it.
And they all seem to point to this possibility that archaic societies views meteorites not as just rocks, but as the first tangible things from the world beyond our world.
The first proof.
The first proof. These fragments carried immense literal religious weight, suggesting this astral substrate in faith where God was, quite literally, hiding.
Residing.
Residing in a lump of rock.
That concept that God lurks in these special, dense, spaceborne places is captivating. But we can't start with the philosophy. We have to start with the physical, tangible proof.
For hard evidence.
Let's start with the secrets written in cosmic steel. Okay, so the dagger from King Tut's tomb is our first piece of solid physical evidence. This thing is a chronological anomaly.
A total anomaly.
It was made from iron in the 18th dynasty. This is an era when Egyptians barely knew how to smelt iron from the ground. They were using bronze tools for everything.
So this dagger was not forged from local ore. It couldn't have been.
No way.
And they had a very, very specific name for it. BINPT.
Iron from heaven.
Right. And they were being perfectly clear about its extraordinary non-terrestrial origin. This was not just, some kind of descriptive poetry.
You meant it.
They absolutely meant it. Scientific analysis of this exact dagger has confirmed its high nickel content, which is a key signature of meteoritic iron. It's a specific type of iron they simply could not produce on Earth at that time.
And it wasn't just the Egyptians.
No, not at all. The Hittites had similar concepts. They wrote about black iron from the sky. So you have the most sophisticated cultures of the ancient Near East, all sharing this specific knowledge about a rare, highly valued metal that fell from the sky.
So why? Why was it so important?
Well, the chronology is the real key to the mystery here. They were using this sky metal long, long before they mastered terrestrial smelting.
So it was their first real experience with high-quality iron.
Exactly. Our sources suggest this early, practical use of iron was always linked to the stars because the material itself was seen as divine. The connection wasn't just ritualistic, it was fundamental. And you can even see it in the language.
How so?
The Greek word for iron, sideros, it's deeply rooted in the word sidus.
Which means star.
Which means star. The very concept of iron, this strong revolutionary material, was hardwired to the cosmos from the very beginning.
So the ancients weren't just thinking meteorites were cool space rocks.
No, not at all.
They were recognizing that the strongest, most enduring material they possessed was quite literally the remnant of a powerful celestial event.
The material was the divine body.
That is a staggering implication.
It is. It means that the earliest examples of human metallurgy, which is the foundation of our ability to build tools and weapons.
Civilization, basically.
Right, civilization. It was all seen as superhuman because the material originated outside of human creation. The art of forging metal, it was the province of the storm gods, of the smith gods, because they were harnessing the very material of the gods themselves.
Which brings us to the ultimate paradox, one that exists right now, today, at the heart of global faith.
The black stone of the Kaaba.
Al-Hajar al-Aswad.
This is a cornerstone that 5 times a day is the spiritual direction for a massive portion of humanity. It's widely speculated by geologists and historians to be a meteor or maybe a piece of impactite glass embedded in the structure.
And the traditions around it are just deeply cosmic. Islamic tradition says it fell from Eden when Adam and Eve were expelled.
And it was supposedly pure white at first.
Pristine white, yeah. But it absorbed the sins of all the hajis, the pilgrims, who have touched it over the centuries, which turned it black.
So it's a literal vessel, a container for accumulated human trauma and sin.
Think about that, the physical weight of sin.
And the paradox is in its physical worship. Monotheistic Islam fundamentally rejects idolatry. It rejects the physical manifestation of the divine.
Right, no idols.
Yet at its most sacred center is a physical rock. Our sources explore this compelling historical argument that there are older, possibly cultic, pre-Abrahamic items of worship inside the Kaaba itself.
Suggesting a much older pagan stone cult tradition that was
assimilated, exactly, absorbed into the new faith.
We're talking about traditions that existed long before the current structures. And that takes us away from individual faiths and zooms us out to a universal ancient practice.
The veneration of sacred stones.
Or beitls.
A beitel is, in essence, a charged sacred stone. The word itself is potentially linked to the Aramaic Bethel.
House of the god.
House of the god. And it wasn't just a statue or a symbol. Think of it more like a consecrated portal, a divine battery.
Like a deity is being plugged into a divine power outlet ready to communicate.
That's a great way to put it. The rock was seen as the physical means for the god to manifest, or to communicate, or to simply be present on Earth.
And this wasn't some fringe belief.
No, this was ubiquitous across the entire Eastern Mediterranean. You find evidence of sacred stone cults in Byblos, in Petra, in Sidon. It was a tangible way to ground the divine, to make it accessible.
And this brings us back to that Roman emperor you mentioned at the start.
Elagabalus. The wild teenage priest emperor.
Yes, the emperor who brought his sun god, Ila al-Jabal, the god of the mountain, to Rome. And what was this all-powerful god?
It was just a large, black, conical meteorite.
You're kidding?
Not at all. Elagabalus, whose reign was defined by, absolute chaos and a kind of revolutionary gender fluidity, he was fundamentally the high priest of a Syrian solar stone cult.
So when he became emperor in 218 AD,
he tried to force Rome to worship this black rock as the supreme deity over Jupiter and everyone else. And this is an ancient history. This is the 3rd century AD.
Wow.
This just shows the astonishing endurance of the meteoritic stone cult. Long after Christianity began to take root, it just wouldn't die.
It survived for millennia. And the shape seems crucial here.
Yes.
We keep seeing this conical or pyramidal or sometimes spherical shape across the relics. Let's talk about the Ben stone in Egypt.
The Ben stone at Heliopolis, or Anu, as the Egyptians called it, is the original template for all of this.
The OG space rock.
The OG space rock. The texts, particularly the pyramid text, describe it as a conical object, which most historians now agree was a meteorite. And what's critical is that the Ben cult predates the worship of the major sun god Ra.
So the rock came first.
The rock worship was the absolute starting point, the primordial source.
So the pyramid shape itself, the foundation of all ancient Egyptian architecture, is potentially memorializing the shape of the original piece of the cosmos that fell to Earth.
That's the theory. And the mystery surrounding it was intense. There are texts describing a massive, complex labyrinth hidden underneath the temple of the Ben.
A labyrinth.
A labyrinth. There are mentions of hidden or missing sacred meteorites at other key sites like Giza and Abydos. The priests weren't just protecting a statue, they were guarding the physical truth.
Which was?
The knowledge that the first house of God was a stone, a piece of a lost, exploded celestial body.
The implication here is just enormous. Every sacred structure, every pyramid, every temple across the ancient world might be pointing back to a single cataclysmic physical event.
It's a huge claim.
It is. We've established the physical evidence, but now we have to move into the deep, esoteric language the ancients used to describe this catastrophe.
And this is where we really transition from archaeology into, let's call it, spiritual linguistics.
Okay.
To understand this theory, we have to look beneath the surface narratives, beneath the Bible, beneath recorded history, and decode the dense metaphors we find in older texts.
Egyptian and Sumerian.
Exactly. And the common thread running through all of them is that the ancients felt tied to their origin. They felt, as one source puts it, a great mooring in heaven.
This sounds like the realm of secret societies. They weren't writing straightforward history.
Yeah.
They were writing in layers of metaphor that were only fully understood by initiates.
Absolutely. The famous religious mysteries, the Eleusinian mysteries in Greece, Orphism, Egyptian priestly knowledge, these were not for public consumption. They were highly, highly guarded.
So what happened to the initiates?
The initiates, after years of preparation, were said to finally see the light. They gained true cosmic knowledge. The uninitiated populace, well...
They were left in darkness.
Exactly. They were left in darkness, worshiping the allegory, not the actual physical truth behind it.
It makes sense why figures like Paul, who many credit as the actual founder of Christianity, would only hint at this deeper truth. He spoke of hearing words ineffable that it is not lawful for a man to utter.
That sounds like a secret oath.
It does. A promise to preserve the esoteric knowledge.
It suggests the core story, the true nature of creation and the death of the divine, was just too profound or maybe too literal and physical for the general populace to handle.
So they needed a simpler story.
They needed the allegory of a single man dying for salvation, not the cosmic physics of an entire planet exploding.
So what was the core physical story they were preserving? What was the secret?
It all revolves around the meteorite as the seed of life. The Greek word is sema.
Okay, explain that for us. How does something as solid and destructive as a rock from space become an act of fertility? That feels like a contradiction.
It does, but it's rooted in ancient cosmogony. Archaic societies viewed the sky in Sumerian as the masculine force.
And the earth, Ki or Gaia, as the feminine.
Right, so when meteorites, the celestial missiles, penetrated the earth, they were seen as literally fecundating the earth with sem, or seed. It was creation through impact.
I see. So the Greek myth of Uranos, heaven, descending on Gaia, the earth, that's not just a poetic metaphor for sex.
It's an anthropomorphized description of a massive meteor shower or a celestial impact event.
Sumerian poems really drive this home. They describe the sacred earth, the virgin, being impregnated by the rich seed of the excelsis god, heaven, or the sky. This wasn't just random destruction. It was the ultimate, necessary act of creation.
And if the Earth is this gigantic planetary womb, what was conceived from this cosmic impregnation?
The giants. Specifically, figures like the Nephilim in the Bible.
The fallen ones.
Right, but the term Nephilim derives from the Hebrew root NFL, which just means to fall. While it's often translated in a moral sense as the fallen ones, the context suggests they are the offspring of the sons of God.
The Elohim who fell to earth.
And the daughters of men. They are the initial, powerful generation conceived in the planetary uterus as a direct result of the celestial material that fell.
So the gods didn't just drop the seed, they dropped pieces of their own celestial bodies.
That is the key distinction. The divine body itself was tied to this celestial iron. There's an Akkadian term, mesa, which was used specifically to describe the meteoritic flesh of the gods.
So this material wasn't just sacred. It was the literal remains of the divine entity.
This immediately brings to mind the ultimate story of dismemberment and scattering.
Osiris in Egypt.
Osiris.
The Osiris myth is the foundational template for this entire celestial trauma. Osiris, the fallen god, is murdered and torn into 14 pieces by his rival, Seth.
And the pieces are scattered all across Egypt.
But the story doesn't end there. The Nile River, and in fact all water in Egypt, was called the efflux of Osiris, effluso di Osiride.
which means
that which flowed out of Osiris.
that sounds like a deluge, a flood.
Is a flood. Our sources argue that this description implies the fallen celestial god emitted a deluge of not just water, but also the very physical substance of his body, meteoritic iron. His dismembered pieces scattered across the earth fertilized it. His death was the essential act required for the earth's fertility and the establishment of life.
It's the ultimate sacrificial creation story. It makes all life contingent on the death and dismemberment of the celestial body. But how does this connect to something as seemingly removed as medieval alchemy?
The connection provides this fascinating bridge through time. The earliest concepts of metallurgy, the ability to harness the flesh of the gods, were seen as superhuman, right?
The work of Smith gods.
Later, the alchemical process, the famous opus magnum, was aimed at creating the philosopher's stone. And this was about way more than just making gold.
What was the goal then?
The goal was transmutation and superseding time itself.
How does that work?
Well, they believed the death and rebirth cycle of the divine planet took eons. It required millennia for common ores to naturally ripen into perfected gold deep within the earth. The alchemists sought to shortcut this divine process.
To fast forward creation.
Precisely. By mimicking the death and resurrection, the transmutation of imperfect matter into a perfected state, the philosopher's stone, they were attempting to achieve instantaneously what the cosmos achieved through the catastrophic death of the original planet. It was a conscious effort to recreate that moment of creation and divine transformation in their laboratory.
So when we talk about the divine cycle, the God who dies, is buried, and is resurrected, we are not just talking about the changing of the seasons or the sun setting and rising. We're talking about a very concrete physical trauma.
That is the core realization. The ancients did not worship the sun or the moon or the stars for their own sake. Those bodies only symbolized the true death and rebirth of the exploded planet.
They were cosmic reminders.
Perfect allegorical reminders. The stars seem to die in the west and rise in the east. The moon is invisible for 3 days. These were just symbolic clocks marking the memory of what they believed was a true physical death, a planet shattering into fragments whose body parts fell as seam.
This is the moment we have to transition from the symbolism to the cataclysmic reality. We've established the objects and the language. Now we have to confront the physical event, the explosion that allegedly founded all of human faith.
And this is where the story gets truly unbelievable.
And remember, before we dive into the cosmic clash of the titans that literally rewrote creation, you need to stick with us.
Oh, yeah. We still need to reveal why the Sumerians called themselves the Blackheads, why the Bible hid the story of the sea monster Rahab.
And how the original sin was apparently caused by the planet being too noisy.
You don't want to miss these details.
No, you really don't. If you're hooked, and I know you have to be, this deep dive is only possible because of the amazing community that supports us. So take a second right now to like and subscribe and join our memberships.
We are building the place for these amazing occulted nuggets of knowledge.
We really are, so don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the heart of the matter, the cataclysm. If the whole theology was built on the premise that God had a physical, dying form,
then the creation myths must trace back to a physical event.
a catastrophic planetary explosion.
That is the fundamental premise of what the sources call the cults of an exploded planet. Every great creation myth involving cosmic battles, Marduk splitting the primordial goddess Tiamat in two,
Osiris being torn apart by Seth.
the god Ninurta annihilating Zu. All of it is inspired, the sources argue, by the original physical battle between rival planetary forces. It's not just a metaphor. It's a kind of cosmological history.
So Tiamat, the chaotic sea monster in the Babylonian myth, she isn't just a symbol for chaos.
No, she represents a physical, water-rich celestial body that was split apart, scattering its substance across the entire solar system.
The asteroid belt.
Possibly. And following this physical, violent destruction, the gods needed a new place to reside. So the metaphysical heaven, the new home of the gods, was conceived of as a copy of the lost, exploded planet. It was a heaven rebuilt in the collective memory of the physical body that was destroyed.
That makes the act of creating humanity even more profound if it comes directly from the shattered remains of the divine body.
It does. Humanity emerges from this cosmic womb after disintegration. In Mesopotamian legend, Tiamat, or sometimes it's Ishtar, dispersed men from her womb like sacrificial sheep following her fragmentation.
So we are literally the residue, the children of the shattered celestial body.
Exactly. Which brings us back to the Sumerians and their strange name for themselves.
The Blackheads. Sagig.
This is such a brilliant linguistic connection. The prevalent academic theory often just, dryly suggests that Sagig refers to the Sumerians' hair color.
Which, as a source of national identity in the context of cosmic mythology, seems
hilariously insufficient. It's just weak.
Right.
Our sources strongly argue that this epithet refers directly to the black color of the meteorites, the sacred, dark, fallen stones we've been talking about.
So by calling themselves blackheads, the Sumerians weren't describing their hair at all. They were declaring their lineage.
They were asserting their origin from the meteoritic seed. They were the children of the cosmic rock, the survivors born from the remnants of the planetary blast. It's a statement of physical divine ancestry.
Now let's tie this ancestry to the concept of guilt, to original sin.
Okay.
In Mesopotamian mythology, the Great Flood, the Diluvium, was ordered by the god Enlil because he was disturbed by the noise, the rumor of humanity.
A noise that made it impossible for him to sleep.
Which, on the surface, sounds like a pretty weak justification for wiping out the entire world.
It's a deep metaphor. The sources suggest this original sin, this noise, was something carried out by the blackheads while they were still in heaven.
Before the fall.
Before the fall. The noise wasn't just volume. It represented the disruptive chaos, the systemic instability caused by the celestial catastrophe itself, the planetary destruction and the subsequent fall. This chaos, this noise, is what justified their expulsion and their creation on Earth.
So humanity, being born of this trauma, carries the disruptive noise of the explosion within its very nature.
That's the idea. And this recontextualizes all the great flood stories. Noah, Utnapishtim, Zusudra. They are not merely stories of localized terrestrial flooding.
No, they are narratives of survivors navigating the remnants of this primordial cosmic trauma.
And the ark, the tiba or casket, also transcends its typical representation as just a wooden boat. It becomes this powerful metaphor for the exploding planet itself.
Awesome.
It's a vessel that allowed humanity or the gods to navigate the celestial sea, which is space, during the catastrophe. It's often described in spherical or self-contained terms, emphasizing its ability to shield its inhabitants from cosmic debris and chaos.
That makes Gilgamesh's famous journey to the underworld even more fascinating. He travels to the Garden of Eden. If the Ark is navigating the celestial sea, where is Gilgamesh actually going?
He's following the path of the fallen fragments. Egyptian texts show that the underworld, the Apsu or Inferi, was often synonymous with this original broken world, a realm of darkness and snakes.
So when Gilgamesh makes his heroic journey to this dark place and sees the sun there,
he is mimicking the death and rebirth cycle of the planet god. He is traversing the inner sacred space where the divine material was scattered and held before its eventual resurrection.
This accumulated evidence, connecting creation myths to a physical space trauma, it forces us to re-examine the Abrahamic faiths, specifically the Old Testament.
It does.
If these pagan myths are so foundational, so universal, what did the Hebrew priests do with them?
The revolutionary argument presented in the sources is that the Torah, the Old Testament, is a deliberate, and I mean highly deliberate, occulted version of these older pagan myths.
Look at how.
It was designed to transition the Jewish people away from the pervasive pagan exploration of the afterlife and the physical nature of God, which was seen as a major threat to a centralizing theological power structure.
A comprehensive theological smokescreen, designed to erase the physical past.
Precisely. And this is why the distinction between monolatry and strict monotheism is so crucial here.
Explain that difference.
Early Jewish practice was monolatry. That's the worship of one God, Yahweh, without denying that other gods existed. This is visible all through the Old Testament. They're told not to worship the other gods, not that the other gods don't exist.
Right, thou shalt have no other gods before me.
Exactly. Strict monotheism, the denial of all other gods, emerged much later. By obscuring the physical origin story and making God invisible and mysterious, they successfully transitioned the core religion away from its physical, meteoritic roots.
And yet, even after this theological erasure, the physical origins of Yahweh Elohim still seep into the text. You can still see them.
They do, because the memory of that physical, violent, celestial force was impossible to excise entirely. When Yahweh descends to scatter the people at Babel, or when he throws fire and brimstone on Sodom.
He's behaving like an active, physical, catastrophic force.
A celestial body in action. The God of Genesis is loud and physical, constantly intervening in the material world.
Which brings us to a specific and frankly explosive example, Rahab, the monster hidden in the Hebrew Bible.
The cosmic battle is subtly preserved in the book of Isaiah, where Yahweh is described fighting and cutting up Rahab. And this is not just any sea monster. Rahab is clearly depicted as a cosmic entity, a planet in the celestial sea, which Yahweh cuts up.
And this is the direct parallel to
The Mesopotamian myth, where Marduk cuts Tiamat in two to create the heavens and the earth.
So Rahab is Tiamat.
Yes, just renamed and repurposed to serve the new monotheistic narrative.
Wow.
When Yahweh casts Rahab down to earth, forming the foundation of the world, we are seeing the exact same exploding planet myth that defined Babylonian and Sumerian creation stories. The biblical narrative is essentially inheriting the physical creation role of the pagan storm god, but making the battle historical and singular rather than continuous and planetary.
The trauma remains.
The trauma remains, but the source is occulted. If you accept this reading, it suggests that the core of the Torah is less about morality and more about managing the spiritual fallout of a cosmic collision.
That truly rewrites the entire history of Western religion. It suggests its foundation is geological or rather astronomical. This is mind-blowing material, and it provides such a clear template for everything that followed.
And that's the synthesis. We have journeyed from the nickel-rich dagger of Tutankhamun to the cosmic battles hidden away in the Old Testament. And the profound truth we've uncovered is that the core archetypal structure of ancient religion, the god that died and was reborn, whose body was scattered as seemed to fertilize the earth, was a trauma based on a real physical event, the exploding planet.
And if that is the primordial truth, then the core figure of the New Testament, Christ, must inevitably follow this same template.
The Christ figure is the ultimate allegorical retelling, or, as our sources suggest, the vulgarized version made accessible to the masses.
What do they mean by that?
The primordial Christ, or the seed of humanity, was sacrificed at the beginning of time during that planetary explosion and was later resurrected. The New Testament stories, Jesus speaking of the seed of humanity in the third person, his death, and especially the crucial 3 days between the death and resurrection of Jesus, paralleling when the moon goes through a period of invisibility for up to 3 days before reappearing as the new moon. According to this framework, they are esoteric allegories preserving that celestial drama for everyone, not just the initiates.
The 3 days in the tomb. That echoes the moon's 3 days of invisibility.
Which in turn symbolizes the planetary core cycle of death and rebirth. It spiritualizes the physics of the event.
And this physical-spiritual connection never truly died out, did it? We see the enduring manifestation of the divine in the black virgins scattered across Europe.
Often in major Catholic shrines.
And why are they black? The common explanation is, centuries of candle smoke, but that always feels a bit insufficient.
That explanation is often totally inadequate, especially when you see that the statue's clothing remains brightly colored.
Right.
Many of these black virgins, like the famous Notre Dame of Ephesus, are descended directly from far older goddess cults. Notably, the mountain goddess Cybele, whose name is etymologically related to the Kaaba,
And the original cult figure of Ephesus.
began as a black meteoric stone, a batile.
So the Black Virgin statues are, in a direct line, spiritual successors to the worship of the black meteorite that fell from the sky. The divine rock endures.
Whether the original stone was described as white, like pure from Eden, or black, like sin-absorbing and meteoritic, the rock that fell from the sky is the most durable, sacred foundation of human faith. They represent the dark, fertile Mother Earth stone that birthed life after the catastrophe.
This is an incredibly unifying theory. It spans geology, astronomy, theology. But if the evidence is so widespread and consistent, from Sumerian names to Roman emperors to Christian artifacts, why did modern scholars miss it for so long?
The sources suggest it really comes down to a fundamental bias, a deeply ingrained preconception.
How so?
Scholars of the 19th and 20th centuries were educated within a dominant monotheistic framework. That framework, which was created by the Hebrew priests thousands of years ago, had already denied the possibility of a physical god.
And it deliberately obscured the pagan concept of the underworld.
Exactly, the inferi or the dat. They were looking for a moral, invisible god, not a physical, meteoritic one.
The key was right in front of them, but their worldview wouldn't let them see it.
Precisely. The key to unlocking the entire mystery was the underworld, where the body of the scattered planet resided before its rebirth. But because monotheism had marginalized or redefined the underworld, modern scholars, steeped in that tradition, they couldn't correctly interpret the older physical texts. They simply couldn't conceive of a religion founded on physics and celestial trauma.
They accepted the premise of an invisible metaphysical God.
And so they could not fathom the pagan view that the invisible God had an earlier physical dying form.
So in a nutshell, the essential secret, preserved through esoteric allegory, is that the creator God began as a physical planetary body that exploded, the God planet as the mountain of heaven. Ancient religions, particularly those of Egypt and Mesopotamia, were fundamentally cults of an exploded planet. The deity was seen as a mountain of heaven, and the cosmos was created through a violent separation of the sky from the earth. The earth was considered the sky's distant and faithful twin. The cosmic fall and sacrifice. The creation began when this celestial mountain disintegrated into water and rocks. The accompanying mythological battle of the gods, like Marduk versus Tiamat, was a symbolic account of this planetary destruction. The meteorite as divine seed. The fragments that rained down were viewed as the seed or solidified seed of the creator god. These celestial fragments, the meteorites, possessed sufficient mass and velocity to penetrate the earth. This entry into the subterranean regions, known as the inferi, or the heart of the earth, was interpreted as the physical death and descent of the god, the birth of man and the great flood. This cosmic impact was believed to have fertilized the sterile earth. Primitive mankind, the Mesopotamian blackheads, were considered meteoritic seed that literally sprouted from the ground like grain. The massive deluge, the flood, that accompanied the catastrophe was the watery efflux of the fallen god. The concealment of truth. Later monotheistic priests, particularly the Hebrew priesthood, found the idea of a physical, mutilated, and fallen god, like the god Osiris, to be an anathema. To maintain a philosophical concept of an invisible, eternal deity, they intentionally suppressed and distorted this primordial truth. The creation of the invisible God. The physical fall created a spiritual paradox. The divine body, the meteorite, remained buried in the earth, but the spirit or soul ascended to an invisible, metaphysical dwelling. This transition is how the transcendent God, separate from the physical world, was conceived. The literal physical creation was then hidden in parables and esoteric codes meant only for the few initiates. The most perplexing mystery, therefore, is why the Christian resurrection narrative, particularly the 3-day time frame, was written. It allegedly happened to reproduce the sacrifice of Christ's primordial alter ego, whose body, the planetary fragment, was meant to remain in the earth as a ransom until the end of days.
Wow, I'm speechless.
But
What happens in the end of days then?
That's an excellent question, because the idea of a catastrophic end is woven directly into the fabric of this ancient cosmic myth. If the creation story is secretly about a planet exploding, then the end of days is seen as the inevitable second catastrophe that completes the cycle. In short, the end of days is a predetermined cosmic disaster involving a planet-sized object returning to Earth, accompanied by fire and the physical destruction of the cosmos as we know it. Here is the breakdown of what the sources suggest happens at the end. The secret blueprint. The second coming is a cosmic collision. The ancient esoteric view holds that the creation and the end follow the same catastrophic blueprint. The final event is not just a spiritual judgment, but a physical reckoning that fulfills the astronomical myth. The cosmic reversal, water to fire. The sources reveal that the original creation, the primordial catastrophe, was defined by a deluge of water, the flood, interpreted as coming from the exploding water-rich planet. The end of days, conversely, is explicitly foretold as the destruction by fire. The current heavens and earth are said to be reserved for fire for the day of judgment and the destruction of impious men. The heavens fall apart. This is a literal destruction of the cosmic order. Prophecies describe the whole army of heaven dissolving and the skies being violently rolled up like a book. This event involves the earth itself being subjected to immense destruction, ready to shatter entirely and stagger like a drunkard. The second coming is the object. The most radical idea is that the highly anticipated second coming of Christ is actually the physical cause of this destruction. The second coming is interpreted as the comet or asteroid that is predicted in future collision with the Earth. This celestial event is so catastrophic that it is the sign of the seed of humanity, Christ, appearing in the sky. The final baptism of fire. The appearance of the Messiah Christ is described in terrifying non-human terms. The light of his face will be like the sun when it shines in its strength, and his feet will be like bronze, glowing red-hot in a furnace. This moment is viewed as the final baptism of fire. The resurrection of the rock. What about the body of the primordial Christ? Remember, the original myth claimed the body, the sacred meteorite planet fragment, was left buried safely in the heart of the earth as a ransom for humanity until the end of days. At the final moment, this primordial Christ, the just servant, who suffered at the beginning of time, will finally be elevated and brought back to heaven. A new creation. The destruction is not final annihilation, but remodeling. The earth must survive to be repopulated by a new generation of the righteous. God will create new heavens and a new earth. This new world will emerge from the wreckage, establishing an era of peace and truth. Essentially, the end of the world is seen as the divine planet returning to complete its cycle of destruction and rebirth, signaling the transition from the old, corrupted physical world to the new, purified creation. We started with a dagger and a black rock, and we ended by realizing that our deepest spiritual needs might be rooted in the collective memory of a planetary explosion from millions of years ago. It forces a complete rethinking of what faith truly is.
And that's where the real intellectual journey for all of us begins. We have historically functioned as homo religiosus man needing to believe in something other, building magnificent structures to honor it.
But now we possess the scientific knowledge that confirms meteorites are iron from heaven. We can decode the mythologies that show our entire spiritual foundation is built upon the literal trauma of a cosmological event. So we're transitioning.
We're moving toward what could be called homo religiosus sapiens, rational non-belief, or at least knowledge-based belief. If the bones of God are actual scientifically verifiable space rocks, what does this new knowledge demand of us?
That's the question.
Do we wait for some true religious knowledge to emerge from this convergence of science and myth, or is this willingness to explore the physical reality behind the myth? Is that the true beginning of wisdom?
It definitely changes the significance of bowing down to a stone that fell from the sky.
Yeah.
It suddenly makes terrifying physical sense. That's a thought to sit with.